on opening the Dharma. This Dharma, incomparably profound and minutely subtle, is rarely encountered, even in hundreds of thousands of millions of ages. Now we can see it, hear it, hold and maintain it. May we completely realize its true meaning.
Thank you for that introduction, Phil, and welcome everybody on the Sunday, the 23rd of November. And we're going to be giving another talk on a series of talks I've been giving on the core practices of Oz Zen. So please make yourselves comfortable. There are many moments in our lives when we sometimes feel we just can't take it anymore. I recall the 1976 movie, a long time ago now, 1976 movie Network, when the main protagonist, the news anchor character, played by the Australian actor Peter Finch in his final role before he died, begins having a psychotic breakdown live on TV. And he successfully encourages viewers to open their windows and start yelling at the top of their voice, "I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore." Sometimes clients or students have asked me for strategies to manage these moments when we feel despairing or angry, feeling I can't take it anymore. There are 3 Zen places I tend to go to when I'm feeling overwhelmed. The last line of the practice principles, being just this moment, compassion's way. The 3 treasures, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. And the last syllable of the Heart Sutra, Gate Gate Parasamgate Buddhi Swa Ah. This last line of the Heart Sutra is an expression of the Absolute, kind of like getting up in front of the assembly of monks and striking what we call the wooden hand with a wooden mallet. Clap! And then saying, the Dharma of the Mahayana is beyond all words. And it is true. The Dharma of the Mahayana is beyond all words. But when I have a student or client in considerable emotional distress asking me for a strategy, if I was to click my fingers and say, the Dharma of the Mahayana is beyond all words, it probably wouldn't be of much use. At that moment, it's probably best to express some kind of kind, empathic response from me. And then maybe later we could discuss some strategies. So being just this moment, when this moment is someone who is in deep distress or anger, what is compassion's way? How do we respond? That's why we say in Zen, don't get stuck in the absolute. We have to live and express the absolute within the relative world. We have to say a word, make an appropriate response. What practice did Dogen choose when he was gravely ill? According to Zen teacher Reb Anderson, when Dogen was approaching his death, on a long piece of white paper, he wrote 3 large black characters, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. He hung this paper on a pillar in his sick room. In his great illness, he roused himself to walk around that pillar, and as he walked around, he chanted, "I take refuge in Buddha. I take refuge in Dharma. I take refuge in Sangha." He brought his whole life energy forward to walk around these three jewels. He gave his whole life to Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, which means he gave his whole life to all living beings. When it comes to the relative world, I therefore turn to the three treasures for inspiration: Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. So the title of the talk today is The Three Treasures, Co-Creating a Safe Relational Home. So Zen practice is premised on the identity of the absolute and the relative. They are both the same and different, which is why we say in Zen, not one, not two. The absolute is expressed in our practice principles as being just this moment. And the identity of the absolute with the relative is expressed as compassion's way. Being just this moment is being non-separate from just this moment, because just this moment is what we are. And being what we are is taking refuge in Buddha. This moment is absolute, and our practice is to make our home in the absolute. If we see that our home is just this moment, then there is nothing else we need to depend on. No matter what happens in our life, we will always be at one with our home. If only it was so easy. For most of us, we need to attend to some what we might describe as intermediary practices in order to cultivate our capacity to feel at home in this moment, just as it is. Just as it is not always a place we want to call home. So that's the first task, to cultivate at-homeness in the present moment. And we do that every time we practice Zazen. Every time we practice Zazen, we are cultivating our capacity to be at home in this moment. However, we need to do more than that. We need to express our understanding and share our response to just this moment, especially when this moment is a shared relationship with others, what we might describe as an intersubjective moment. We are all living a dream within the one big dream we all share. The challenge is to integrate our insight into non-separation, into our everyday life of work and relationships. How do we practice our insight into non-separation in our relationships with others? In other words, what is the optimal response to the situation we find ourselves in, both to ourselves and to others? After realizing our true nature, how do we bring all beings into mutual harmony? Or when we feel, I'm as mad as hell and I can't take it anymore, what or who do we turn towards? The three treasures. This is why we need to import the theory and language of psychotherapy into Zen practice. Like all Buddhist traditions, Zen developed within a culture of monastic relationships, not intimate family relationships. The koan tradition offers many metaphors of realizing the identity of the absolute and the relative. There are only a few metaphors or stories about relationships. One of the very few koan stories that speaks about alienation from self and others is the story of Seijo's soul is separated from case 35 of the koan collection called The Gateless Gate. The story goes as follows. Some of you will be familiar with it, some of you might not have heard it before. Once upon a time, in the province of Ko, there lived an old man named Chokan. Chokan loved his daughter very much. Her name was Sei. She was very beautiful, and Chokan used to tease her when she was still a child, saying that her beauty matched that of her cousin, the handsome Ochu. Just about the time that the two cousins realized they were in love, Chokan announced his choice of another man as husband for Sei. The young lovers were heartbroken. Ochu left the town, setting off in a small boat. He had rowed a distance when he noticed someone running along the bank, waving to him. To his great joy, he found that it was Sei who had followed him. They decided to travel to a far-off land and make a life together. A few years later, when Sei had become the mother of two children, she realized for the first time how deep the parents' love is. Her conscience began to bother her about the way she had treated her beloved father. Her husband, Ochu, who also regretted what they had done to Chokan, suggested that they return to their homeland to ask for his forgiveness. When they arrived in the province of Ko, Sei remained in the boat while Ochu went to apologize to Chokan and tell him what had happened. The old man listened incredulously. Finally, he asked Ochu whom he was talking about. The young husband replied, "Your daughter, Sei." "But Sei never left home," the old man exclaimed. "Shortly after you went away, she became ill and is still confined to her bed. She hasn't uttered a word since you left." "You must be mistaken," Ochu replied. "Sei followed me, and we went together to a far-off country. We are married and have two children. She is in excellent health and wants to see you again and ask your forgiveness for running away and marrying without your permission. If you don't believe me, come down to the boat and see for yourself." The old man was reluctant, so Ochu went along to bring Sei back to her father's house. In the meantime, Chokan went into the bedroom to tell the sick Sei what had happened. Without a word, the invalid rose from her bed and rushed out to meet the approaching Sei, and the two became one. Chokan said to his daughter, "Ever since Ochu left, you have been dumb and lifeless, as though your soul had fled." Sei told him, "I didn't know I was home, sick in bed. When I heard that Ochu had left, I followed his boat as if in a dream." We can see how the depressed Seijo had separated from her soul in her need to accommodate to the wishes of her father. She had to dissociate the part of her soul that loved Ochu. She falls depressed and never leaves her bed. However, when the Seijo that leaves with her beloved has her own children, she realizes how she had to dissociate from the child part in her that loves her father. Significantly, she is called back to her original home. She returns and reunites both parts of herself. So this is an example from an old folk tale in ancient China of how we separate and divide within ourselves in order to accommodate ourselves to seemingly irresolvable situations. We can become self-alienated, and also we can become alienated in our relationships. The father and his daughter who accommodates are alienated from each other. Returning home in this story is synonymous with integration and wholeness. In order to assist us to bring a psychologically minded approach into our Zen practice, we therefore need to look towards psychotherapy to provide Zen with a language that can help us to build Sangha, to build harmonious relationships, both within ourselves and with our intimate partners, family, and friends. Psychoanalysis has a vast theoretical storehouse of languages we can draw upon. In this talk, I will import 3 themes from psychoanalysis, which have a family resemblance to related themes in the Zen tradition, which therefore help us to build a bridge between Zen and psychoanalysis. The 3 themes are having a secure attachment and finding our home, our refuge, or sanctuary, experiencing intimacy rather than alienation, and the provision of optimal responsiveness, attunement, and mutual recognition. Having a secure attachment is associated with the capacity to form intimate relationships that provide stability and dependability, and at the same time respect the need for the partner or child to grow in their own unique ways. Finding our home or refuge resonates with the 3 refuges in Buddhism. Attachment research tells us about the importance of the provision of a safe home base for the child. The word refuge has a family resemblance to refugees seeking sanctuary, a place of safety where they can feel at home and experience a sense of belonging. Let's start with the importance of the 3rd refuge, Sangha. One day, this is a story from the old Buddhism. One day, Ananda, the attendant to the Buddha, apparently had enough of Sangha politics. He'd experienced his "I can't take this anymore" moment, and he went off to practice on his own. But after a while, he realized that he did need Sangha, and when he returned to the Sangha, he said to the Buddha, "I've realized that Sangha is half of the practice." To which the Buddha smiled and replied, "No, Ananda, no, Ananda. It is the whole of the practice." I think in traditional Buddhism, the Sangha was very much identified with the association of celibate monks having chosen a life of non-attachment. The project we are involved in Ordinary Mind Zen, is co-creating a post-monastic Sangha, suited to the needs and circumstances of living a life of attachment to intimate partners, family, friends, and work. How do we understand and create Sangha anew and rediscover Buddhism anew without wearing robes? How do we create the sense of belonging to a shared tradition and practice? Barry Majid has significantly expanded my appreciation of the importance of Sangha, but understood as emotional interdependence and mutual recognition based upon an understanding of a healthy sense of a relational self. In our model of practice, we do not seek to disengage from all our emotional and social needs for belonging, recognition, sexual intimacy, and love. Rather, we embrace them. We do not seek refuge in being an island unto ourselves. We seek refuge in human connection, even though human connection is not always a reliable source of refuge. In ordinary mind Zen, we aspire to living in accordance with life as it is. Our last line of the practice principle states, being just this moment, compassion's way. This moment is the absolute. Our Zazen practice is being just this moment. We are not seeking another, more special moment in the future. This moment is it. This moment is always it. However, this moment is not always going to be easy. This moment is also going to be shared with others, and others may not share our understanding of just this moment. Do we share this moment with others in an intimate or in an alienated way? How can we connect with others when the going gets tough? Because I think it's sometimes easier to experience intimacy on the cushion rather than a shared sense of intimacy with others. The sound of rain falling on the Zendo roof, or the sound of a bird singing in the distance, or the lavender carpet falling from the jacaranda tree, and the smell of the jacaranda tree. These moments of intimacy that we experience in nature can often really be special experiences, especially when we're on retreat, but also in our everyday lives. Just that shared sense of intimacy with nature. And we can also have a sense of intimacy with others when we're sitting in the Zendo together, not saying any words to each other in particular, but we're all sitting in our cushions and sharing in this shared experience, this joint experience of Zazen together can feel very intimate as well. But when this moment we are sharing with others is one of miscommunication, misattunement, confrontation, or being told something we don't want to hear, how do we harmonize then? I think the metaphor of music is helpful. If Buddha means non-separation from Buddha nature, the awakened one or the one who realizes, and Dharma means life as it is, the 10,000 things, and Sangha means harmony, then our practice is not only to awaken all beings, but to harmonize all beings. Hence, we need to find ways of attuning and resonating with others, even when the circumstances are difficult. Sometimes we may just need to leave them alone without reacting to the situation. If you like, practicing being just this moment is the foundation for building a capacity for the self-regulation of our emotions. But we also embrace the co-regulation of emotions, the need for attunement and recognition in human relationships. Is also living in accord with life as it is, to live in accord with being human. Is to live and love in accordance with our interpersonal needs. Therefore, we could also say that happiness is a function of our emotional and social needs being met. And this includes self-compassion. This leads to our inevitable dependency on other human beings for our happiness. Therefore, we must tolerate the reality that happiness is both interdependent and impermanent, like everything else. We must tolerate that relationships will sometimes disappoint us, let us down, even hurt us very badly. As Bari Majid teaches, we must therefore practice dependency intelligently. which is alluding to Joko Beck's invitation for us to suffer intelligently. Barry feels there is a blind spot in Joko's teaching on relationships. He detects a tendency towards autonomy in her teachings, and a lack of acknowledgement of the importance of accepting the need for a healthy dependency. He finds a hint of spiritual bypassing in her teaching. Therefore, Barry wants us to acknowledge we are, quote, dependent mammals that need love and nurturance and connection and groups. And he tells us there is a danger in religious practice, including Zen, to seek to transcend our dependence through taking refuge in God, or being with a capital B, or simply by reifying happiness or peace as some special state of pure awareness beyond human need and vulnerability. So the purpose of our practice is not to seek happiness per se, but to develop the willingness to live in accordance with the reality of life as it is, and to love and be loved in return, and to express our creativity through our work in our own unique ways. Again, we meet up with the old Sigmund Freud, who also argued that love and work are the foundations for our humanity and for our psychological health and happiness. Unfortunately, the monastic home leaver tradition to practice offers as a goal a picture of pure autonomy and imperturbability in response to the vicissitudes of life. It says that because impermanence is inescapable, we should try not to hold on to anything. In contrast, Barry says our practice is about recognizing the inescapability of vulnerability, attachment, and dependence. The willingness to enter into relationships, to depend on others, and be vulnerable reflects the understanding that the wholeness of ourselves and our lives is inseparable from our Buddha nature, which includes vulnerability, attachment, and dependence. In our practice, we learn to experience and accept the uncontrollability of life, especially the uncontrollability of others. We are not seeking to take refuge in Buddha or Zazen if that is seen as a kind of quest for autonomy and freedom from the inevitable emotional consequences of living in intimate relationships. However, it is probably the case that many people seek out Zen as a means of coping with the turbulence and unpredictability of relational life. And it is true that Zazen can provide a platform for supporting our engagement with the emotions that arise in the context of intimate relationships. I therefore interpret taking refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha from a relational perspective, drawing upon Heinz Kohut's self-psychology. When we are taking refuge in our relational self. That is, our relationships with others are inseparable from how we experience ourselves. We are taking refuge in what Kohut called self-object experiences, or what I call these days affirming self-experiences. In Kohut's self-psychology, the three core relational needs are what he called mirroring, idealizing, and twinship, finding someone that we feel a kinship with. When these needs are met by empathic caregivers or partners, friends, or therapists, it builds self-structure and cohesion. Mirroring involves the need to have one's talents and abilities recognized and affirmed by others, particularly caregivers. It's the experience of feeling seen, valued, and appreciated for who one is. A healthy mirroring experience helps build a sense of self-worth and confidence. Idealizing refers to the need to idealize or look up to someone, often a parent or authority figure, who possesses strength, calmness, and wisdom. This allows the child to feel a sense of awe and merging with a powerful idealized self-object. Over time, these idealized qualities are internalized, contributing to the development of a stable system of values, goals, and ambitions. And twinship. The twinship aspect involves the need to feel a sense of belonging, similarity, and connection with others, to feel just like someone else. This can be a need to be seen and understood, to have one's feelings validated by others. It contributes to the sense of being a part of a larger group and developing a sense of belonging. The alter ego aspect of the twinship transference refers to a recognition also of difference in the other, which we also share in common. These experiences are critical for the development of a healthy, cohesive relational self. If these needs are not adequately met in childhood, it can lead to difficulties in regulating self-esteem, forming healthy relationships, and developing a stable sense of self. The three refuges are a metaphor. They have etymological roots in shelter, protection, and sanctuary, some place of peace and safety. But these refuges are not a place to hide. They are not defenses to keep the world outside at bay. Rather, they are affirming of the self, allowing the self to open and take care of self and others. Experientially, they have the quality of expansiveness. Our heart opens when we are in intimate relationship with them, or as Thich Nhat Hanh might say, they interbe with our relational lives. The historical figure of the Buddha can be interpreted as an idealizing self-experience. And when we sit in Zazen with our Sangha, we feel a sense of belonging or being at home in the world, what Kohut called a twinship self-experience. We can also interpret taking refuge in Buddha as taking refuge in Zazen. Taking refuge in Zazen helps us to create the context for self-recognition through just sitting, being an enactment of self-acceptance. Zazen is an activity. It includes the activity of stillness, silence, and feeling the breath or contemplating a koan. All these activities are regulating and facilitating of affirming self-experiences. As our body relaxes, we let go of thoughts and surrender to the completeness of this moment. The self-experience of Zazen is self-affirming and self-actualizing. We may feel a greater sense of stability sitting like a mountain. Feelings of gratitude may arise for being alive. Our heart opens. We can also feel a sense of being held, non-judgmentally, in the loving arms of Zazen, so to speak, a kind of maternal holding by something bigger and wiser, an idealizing self-experience, self-intimacy, self-merger with something bigger, the feeling of arriving home in the activity of Zazen. Similarly, the Dharma or teachings can also provide a sense of finding a home, a sense of belonging in a tradition. When I was younger, in my formative years as a Zen student, I once thought of becoming an Anglican priest and teaching a form of Christian Zen meditation. I actually enrolled in a seminary at Morpeth College in Newcastle. However, I just couldn't find my home in the biblical scriptures. I had already found my spiritual home in the Zen Buddhist scriptures. We can also think of Dharma as reality, and hence taking refuge in Dharma as being able to accept life as it is. The relationship between teacher and student is also one of the pillars of the Zen tradition, along with the creation and maintenance of a Sangha. Without a Sangha, there is no Zen. The teacher can work with the student in helping them to recognize their curative fantasies. But also part of this work requires the teacher to be aware of the possibility that the curative fantasy is working on an unconscious level, and for the student to experience some insight into this. It is very difficult for this to be the case if the teacher is only meeting with the student in order for the student to pass through a traditional koan curriculum. The relationship needs nurturing. in the same way a psychotherapy relationship needs nurturing, through meeting on a regular basis to develop the emotional and relational trusts that is arising. One of the ways I like to do this is to offer a 1-hour meeting private consultation every 4 weeks. And this is a perfect setting to deepen the relationship and develop trust, the lack of which is often a barrier to developing the student-teacher relationship, which these days I prefer to describe as a mutual spiritual friendship. It is a well-known fact that students have been badly let down and hurt by Zen teachers. And many students have been badly hurt in relationships with other kinds of authority figures, be they parents, priests, mentors, or teachers in different kinds of organizations. So it is very understandable that students may feel uneasy about developing a committed relationship with one teacher. This may take the form of putting their trust in Zazen, but not in the teacher or Sangha. Or it may take the form of developing relationships with many teachers, not putting all your eggs in one basket. In Ordinary Mind Zen, students are encouraged to explore developing a relationship with a teacher, even though this may bring up anxiety. This also helps to divest students of romanticized notions of teachers being special beings, the fantasy of transcendence through meeting a perfect guru, a charismatic teacher that embodies otherworldliness, can also be a barrier to accepting the rather ordinary nature of Ordinary Mind Zen teachers. So the teacher-student relationship in Ordinary Mind Zen practice offers another opportunity for students to divest themselves from all the curative fantasies of what an enlightened teacher is supposed to look like or sound like. If you follow this path long enough, hopefully it will deliver to you the recognition that you yourself are also the embodiment of the Dharma. The Sangha can also be just as important, if not more important, than the teacher-student relationship. Spiritual friendship can provide many opportunities for mutual recognition and creating a sense of belonging. In our Oz Zen Sangha, we intentionally create opportunities for Sangha members to express themselves creatively in Sangha settings through performing music or poems or retelling their own spiritual autobiographies, which are designed to create a sense of mutual affinity and belonging. So in conclusion, Homemaker Zen. Ultimately, the Sangha is the relational home of both the teacher and student, and the emphasis that Zen is a communal practice that we share with others in our shared world. In the same way we see Zazen as a performance or reenactment of the Buddha's realization of the perfection of everything, the co-creation of Sangha is also a reenactment of Buddha's realization of the interdependence of everything. Ordinary Mind Zen brings a psychologically minded approach to Zen practice when speaking about the effects of relational trauma and how we recover from relational trauma. One of the effects of trauma is disconnection and disassociation from the body. To begin, we need to gently reclaim our bodies by being able to experience our breath and body sensations without being triggered. However, another layer of trauma is disconnection from relationships, from fear of being hurt again. So communal practice provides an opportunity to see the co-creation of Sangha as being all about the co-creation of safety in order to build trust in each other. In conclusion, I would like to return to the meaning of finding home. Home and family is associated with attachment. This was rejected by early Buddhism as a source of suffering. The path of Buddhist monastics was known as the path of home leaving. In our Ordinary Mind Zen practice, home and family is given a positive value. Attachment is embraced, and non-attachment is reformulated as non-attachment to all the different ways human beings seek to avoid or control the effects of impermanence and interdependence. In fact, monasticism itself can be understood as another way in which we may seek to escape the inevitable suffering brought about by impermanence and interdependence. Ordinary mind Zen challenges the original interpretation of non-attachment, meaning the need to detach from home and family. No longer do homemakers need to see themselves as second-class Buddhists. Ordinary mind Zen provides a vision of homemaker Buddhism or post-monastic Buddhism as being a more holistic and healthier model of spiritual practice than home leaver Buddhism. Monasticism is no longer necessary to live a life dedicated to Dharma practice. In fact, most Western Zen practitioners are already home leavers in the sense that we were not born into a Buddhist religious culture. We left the religious home we were born into, predominantly Christian, and went in search of a new home. And many of us felt drawn to Zen Buddhism, and we began the process of co-creating a new home for ourselves and like-minded others. In co-creating a Sangha based on safety and trust, we are building a new home for ourselves, a home where we can all rightfully claim a sense of belonging, where we can all be fully recognized as unique individuals and nourished in the expression of our unique personal strengths and talents. So thank you for listening today. And now we can open up for any comments or questions.